I found Poppy shivering under the porch steps at 2 in the morning, her red collar soaked through from the rain that had been falling for hours. The back door was wide open. Again! I crouched down, my pajama pants getting muddy as I coaxed her out. She pressed against my legs, trembling not just from the cold, but from something deeper. Fear, maybe. Or exhaustion from trying to survive another night that Marla had decided she didn't deserve shelter. "It's okay, baby girl," I whispered, scooping up all 30 pounds of her. Her fur was matted, and she smelled like wet concrete and desperation. Inside our narrow Portland row house, I toweled her off in the kitchen, keeping my movements quiet. Nate was asleep upstairs, and his mother Marla had claimed the guest room for what was supposed to be a 2-week visit. That was 6 weeks ago. I filled Poppy's water bowl and watched her drink like she'd been lost in the desert. The food bowl sat empty on its usual spot by the pantry. I checked the bag of kibble we'd bought 3 days ago, still full, untouched. My hands shook as I measured out her dinner, or breakfast. Time felt meaningless when you're watching someone slowly disappear. This wasn't the first incident, but each one had been different, escalating in cruelty and creativity. The pattern had become clear over the past month, ever since Marla decided that Poppy was disrupting the household energy and needed to learn her place. First came the accidental door incidents during storms. Then food bowls moved to unreachable shelves, water dishes hidden behind appliances, and recently I'd noticed Poppy seemed unusually drowsy after meals, though Marla always had explanations. Each incident had a plausible excuse. I must have forgotten to close the door. Oh, was that her bowl? I thought it was just clutter. The water? I cleaned it and forgot to refill it. She must have gotten into something. You know how dogs are. Nate believed every explanation, or pretended to. I'd tried talking to him after the 3rd incident. "Your mum seems to have strong feelings about Poppy," I'd said carefully, testing the waters. "Mom's just particular about house rules," he'd replied, not looking up from his laptop. "She's trying to help Poppy become better trained." Better trained, as if 3 years of being a perfect companion wasn't enough. I sat on the kitchen floor, Poppy finally settling in my lap. She was smaller than she'd been a month ago. I could feel her ribs more clearly through her fur. The vet had said she was healthy during her checkup in February. No underlying conditions, good weight, bright eyes. That was before Marla's arrival. Now Poppy spent most of her time hiding, under the bed, behind the couch, in the closet with my shoes, places where she felt safe, which apparently nowhere in this house qualified anymore. I heard footsteps upstairs, the bathroom door closing, water running. Marla was an early riser, usually up by 5 to do her morning stretches and drink her special tea blend. She'd take over the kitchen for an hour, preparing elaborate breakfast that she'd eat alone, leaving the dishes for me to clean before I left for my shift at the coffee shop. The footsteps moved down the hallway toward the stairs. I helped Poppy to her feet and guided her toward the living room. "Go lie down," I whispered. She obeyed immediately, curling up on her bed in the corner, making herself as small as possible. Marla appeared in the kitchen doorway, already dressed in her daily uniform of crisp slacks and a sweater that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her silver hair was perfectly styled despite the early hour. "You're up early," she observed, her eyes scanning the kitchen. They landed on Poppy's freshly filled bowls. "Couldn't sleep," I said. She moved to the sink and filled her electric kettle. "I hope that animal didn't wake you. She was making quite a fuss around midnight." She was outside, in the rain. Marla's hand paused over her tea cabinet. "Was she? I thought I heard scratching at the door earlier. I assumed she was asking to go out." The back door was wide open. "How strange, the wind must have blown it open." She selected a tea bag with deliberate care. "You know, Ava, I've been thinking about Poppy's situation." My stomach clenched. Her situation? She seems so anxious lately. Restless? Perhaps she'd be happier somewhere with more space. A yard? Other dogs to play with? The words hung in the air between us like smoke from a fire neither of us wanted to acknowledge. "She's happy here," I said quietly. Marla turned to face me fully. Her smile was gentle, practiced. The same expression she wore when explaining why Nate needed to focus on his career instead of distractions like weekend trips or date nights. Of course she is, dear, but sometimes what makes us happy isn't what's best for us. She poured hot water over her tea bag. I have a friend who runs a lovely rescue organization. Very selective about their placements. Poppy could find a family that's better equipped to meet her needs. Her needs are being met, are they? Marla's voice remained gentle, but something sharper flickered behind her eyes. She seems quite stressed. All that hiding, the nervous behaviors. It's concerning. I wanted to tell her exactly why Poppy was stressed. Wanted to catalogue every forgotten door, every empty bowl, every time I'd found my dog cowering in places she used to consider safe. Instead, I said, "She's fine. If you say so." Marla stirred her tea with precise movements. Though I do worry about the impact on the household. Nate has such important deadlines coming up with the Morrison project. A calmer environment would be beneficial for everyone. There it was, the real reason wrapped in concern for my fiancé's work stress. "I should get ready," I said, standing up. "My shift starts at 7. Of course, such dedication to that little coffee shop. Though I do hope you're thinking about more substantial career plans. Once you and Nate are married, appearances matter more than you might realize." I left her in the kitchen with her tea and her implications. Upstairs, I found Nate getting dressed for work, his tie hanging loose around his neck. He looked up when I entered, taking in my muddy pajamas and probably the expression on my face. "Everything okay?" "Your mum wants to rehome, Poppy." His hand stilled on his tie. "She mentioned she was concerned about Poppy's stress levels." "She's stressed because your mother keeps sabotaging her basic needs." "Ava!" His voice carried a familiar warning. The same tone he used when I suggested his mum's visit had gone on long enough. When I mentioned that maybe she could stay in a hotel. When I pointed out that our 2-bedroom house wasn't designed for 3 adults and a dog who was increasingly being treated like an unwelcome intruder. "It's not accidental, Nate. There's a pattern." He finished knotting his tie, avoiding my eyes in the dresser mirror. "Mom's not cruel. She's just particular about house rules. House rules don't include systematic harassment of animals. Maybe you should install a better latch. The wind can be pretty strong." "The wind." Right. I watched him gather his wallet and keys, preparing to leave for a job that required him to travel 3 days a week, leaving me alone with his mother and her escalating campaign against my dog. "What if something serious happens to her?" I asked. "Nothing's going to happen." He kissed my forehead quickly, a distracted gesture. "Mom will be staying a few more weeks while she looks for a new place. Just try to get along with her, okay? She's having a hard time adjusting." The adjustment that had been going on for 8 months since her divorce was finalized. The adjustment that had left Marla with a generous settlement and a burning resentment toward anything that represented the happy relationship she'd lost. After Nate left, I stood in our bedroom, looking at the framed photo on the dresser. The 3 of us at last year's company picnic. Nate's arm around me, both of us smiling. Poppy sitting at our feet, her red collar bright against her brown and white fur, her tail mid-wag. We looked like a family then. I could hear Marla moving around downstairs, the familiar sounds of her morning routine. Dishes clattering, the television news turning on, the back door opening and closing. I rushed to the window that overlooked our small backyard. Poppy was outside again, standing uncertainly by the fence. Marla appeared in the frame, gesturing toward the neighbor's yard while talking on her phone. "I'm just saying, some dogs are better suited to farm life." Her voice carried up through the open window. "More space to run? Other animals for company? It would be kinder than keeping her cooped up in a city house." I was dressed and downstairs in 2 minutes. Poppy was pressed against the back fence, trying to make herself invisible. When she saw me, her whole body sagged with relief. "There you are, sweetie." I opened the gate and she practically flew into my arms. Marla ended her phone call and turned toward us with that same practiced smile. "I was just giving her some fresh air. She seemed restless." "It's 40 degrees and drizzling. Dogs are hardy creatures. A little weather never hurt anyone." I looked at my dog, shivering despite her thick coat, and felt something shift inside my chest. Not anger, exactly. Something colder, more certain. From now on, Poppy stays inside unless I'm with her. Marla's smile didn't waver, but her eyes narrowed slightly. "Of course, dear." though I hope you'll consider what's truly best for everyone involved. I carried Poppy inside and settled her on the couch with a blanket. She burrowed into the soft fabric, seeking warmth and safety. My shift at the coffee shop started in an hour. 8 hours of making drinks and pretending everything was normal while wondering what I'd find when I got home. But as I looked at Poppy, finally relaxed for the first time in weeks, I realized something had changed. I was done pretending this was about house rules or training or what was best for everyone. This was about someone systematically trying to make my dog disappear, and I wasn't going to let that happen. The security camera arrived 2 days later. I installed it in the back corner of the kitchen while Marla was at her afternoon yoga class and Nate was at work. A small wireless unit that would record directly to my phone. The angle captured the back door, Poppy's food station, and most of the kitchen. If I was going crazy, if I was imagining things, the camera would prove it. If I wasn't, I'd have evidence. That first day, nothing happened. Marla made her elaborate breakfast, cleaned her dishes, disappeared into the guest room for her phone calls. Normal, almost disappointing. The second day, I caught her moving Poppy's water bowl. Not far. Just 6 inches to the left, behind the kitchen island where Poppy couldn't see it from her usual spot by the pantry. On the recording, Marla's movements were deliberate, careful. She glanced around first, then lifted the bowl with both hands, setting it down gently to avoid noise. When I got home from work, Poppy was lying in her bed, panting. The water bowl sat in its new location, empty. I moved it back and filled it. Poppy drank for a full minute. "How was your day?" Nate asked that evening, not looking up from his laptop. "Fine. Poppy seemed thirsty when I got home. She's probably just hot. It's been warm." It was 58 degrees and raining. The third day brought escalation. I watched it happen on my phone during my lunch break, sitting in the back room of the coffee shop. Marla was on the phone, pacing the kitchen. Poppy lay quietly in her bed when Marla walked over and kicked at the bed. "Move," she said to the phone caller. "Something's in my way." She picked up Poppy's bed and moved it to the dark laundry room. For 2 hours, Poppy sat in that cramped space while Marla stayed in the bright kitchen. When I called home, Marla claimed Poppy had wandered off somewhere quiet and made a show of coaxing her back out. That night, I showed Nate the video. He watched in silence, his expression carefully neutral. When it finished, he handed my phone back. "What do you want me to say, Ava? That you see it, that this isn't normal?" "I see my mother rearranging furniture and checking on the dog when you called." She isolated Poppy for 2 hours in a dark room for no reason. Maybe she was cleaning. Maybe she needed the space clear. She was on the phone the entire time, Nate. She could see Poppy was distressed. He rubbed his forehead, a gesture I recognized, the same one he used when his boss asked him to work late or when his credit card bill was higher than expected. The gesture of a man being asked to deal with something he didn't want to acknowledge. "My mum's going through a rough time. She's not used to having animals in the house. Maybe she's just learning the boundaries." "It's been 6 weeks. Ava." His voice carried a warning edge. "She's my mother." The conversation ended there, like they always did. His mother. The unspoken rule that her needs, her comfort, her interpretation of events would always take priority over mine. But I had the video now, and I was going to keep recording. The breakthrough came a week later, at 3 in the morning. I'd started keeping my phone on the nightstand with the camera app running, the sound turned down but the motion alerts enabled. The soft buzz woke me from deep sleep. On the screen, Marla stood in the kitchen in her robe, doing something to Poppy's food bowl. I watched her take a small container from her purse and sprinkle something over the kibble. Then she mixed it in with her finger, making sure it was evenly distributed. My blood went cold. She was putting something in Poppy's food. I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Nate, and crept downstairs. Marla had already returned to the guest room. The kitchen was dark and silent. Poppy's food bowl sat in its usual spot, filled with what looked like normal kibble. But I could smell something faint and chemical underneath the usual dog food scent. I emptied the entire bowl into a plastic bag and sealed it. Then I refilled the bowl with fresh food from the bag in the pantry. The next morning, I took the contaminated food to the emergency vet clinic before my shift. "We can test this," Dr. Martinez said, examining the kibble. "But I have to ask, do you suspect intentional tampering?" The word hung between us like a physical thing. Tampering. I'd been thinking it for days but hadn't let myself say it out loud. "I don't know. Maybe. I have a video of someone putting something in it. We'll need to report this if the tests show anything dangerous." I understand. That afternoon, my phone rang during the lunch rush. "Dr. Martinez, the kibble tested positive for a significant amount of over-the-counter sleep medication. Not enough to kill a dog Poppy's size, but enough to make her very sick. Lethargy, vomiting, possible liver damage with repeated exposure." I had to sit down. How long would something like this take to show symptoms? Depending on the dose, anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours. The symptoms would look like general illness at first. A lot of people might think their dog just had a bad day. I thought about the past few weeks. Poppy's increased sleeping, her lack of appetite some days, the way she'd been more withdrawn, hiding more often. How long had this been going on? "Doctor, I need to ask you something. If someone was doing this regularly, small doses over time, what would happen?" "Cumulative organ damage. The dog would get sicker gradually. Eventually," she paused. "Eventually, it could be fatal." I thanked her and hung up. Then I called my neighbour, Tess. Tess lived 2 houses down with her girlfriend Marcus. She worked from home doing graphic design, which meant she was usually around during the day. More importantly, she'd always been kind to Poppy, stopping to pet her during walks and asking about her by name. "Ava, hi! Is everything okay? You sound upset." "Tess, I need to ask you a huge favour. Can you watch Poppy during the day?" "Just for a while." "Of course. But what's wrong?" I found myself crying without meaning to. The words came out in a rush. Marla's behaviour, the videos, the poisoned food. "Jesus, Ava, you need to call the police." "I can't. Not yet." "Why not?" "Because calling the police meant admitting that my fiancé's mother was trying to kill my dog. It meant blowing up my relationship, my life, everything I'd built with Nate. It meant choosing Poppy over the man I'd planned to marry. Because I need to talk to Nate first." Tess was quiet for a moment. "Okay. But Poppy comes here tomorrow morning, and she stays until you figure this out. I'm not letting that woman near her again." That night, I sat Nate down and showed him everything. The videos, the test results, the timeline of Poppy's declining health. He watched it all in silence. When I finished, he stared at the coffee table for a long time. "This is insane," he said finally. "I know. My mother wouldn't do this. The evidence says otherwise. There has to be another explanation." I looked at the man I'd loved for 3 years, the man I'd planned to spend my life with, the man who was looking at video evidence of his mother poisoning my dog and searching for ways to explain it away. "What explanation would make this okay, Nate?" He didn't answer. "I'm taking Poppy to stay with Tess tomorrow, until your mum leaves." Now he looked up. "You can't do that." "I can, and I will." "Ava, please, don't make this bigger than it has to be. We can work this out as a family." "Family." The word twisted something inside my chest. "Your mother isn't my family, Nate. She's been systematically harming my dog. You don't know that for sure." I stared at him. "What would convince you? Do I need to wait for Poppy to die?" The silence stretched between us like a canyon neither of us knew how to cross. Finally, Nate spoke. "Maybe it would be better if Poppy stayed somewhere else for a while. Just until Mum finds her own place." Better for whom, I wondered, but I didn't ask. "Fine," I said, "but I'm staying with her." His face changed. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm not leaving Poppy alone with your mother in this house. If she goes, I go." "Ava, you're being ridiculous." "Am I? Your mother is poisoning my dog, and you're asking me to just ignore it. She's going through a difficult time. So is Poppy. So am I." We stared at each other across the living room that had once felt like home. "If you leave," Nate said quietly, "don't expect me to come after you." The threat hung in the air between us. Choose him or choose Poppy. I'd been afraid of this moment for weeks, this ultimate test of loyalty. I'd hoped it wouldn't come to this. But looking at Nate now, Seeing the way he was willing to sacrifice my dog's safety for his mother's comfort, I realized the choice had already been made. "I wouldn't expect you to," I said. The next morning, I packed 2 bags, one for me, one for Poppy. Everything else could wait. As I loaded them into my car, Marla appeared on the front porch in her robe. "Off on an adventure, dear?" she called out, her voice carrying that same false sweetness. I looked at her. This woman who had smiled at me over breakfast while slowly poisoning my dog. "Just temporarily," I said. "But we both knew it was permanent," she smiled. "Drive safely." I helped Poppy into the passenger seat and started the engine. In the rearview mirror, I could see Marla still standing on the porch, watching us go. She'd won, I thought. She'd driven me out of my own life. But as I pulled into Tess's driveway and saw my neighbour waiting with a warm smile and open arms, I realised something else. Maybe winning wasn't about staying. Maybe it was about knowing when to leave. And maybe, just maybe, it was about what came next. Tess's house smelled like lavender and fresh bread. Everything mine had stopped being. She led us to her spare bedroom, where she'd already set up a dog bed next to the window and filled 2 bowls with fresh water and food. Poppy immediately went to the water and drank for what felt like 5 minutes straight. "When did you last see her drink like that?" Tess asked. I tried to remember. "I don't know. Weeks, maybe." Jesus, Ava. We sat on Tess's couch while Poppy explored her new space, sniffing corners and checking doorways. She moved differently here, less hunched, more curious. "How long can we stay?" I asked. "As long as you need. Marcus is traveling for work this month anyway. It'll be nice having company." My phone buzzed constantly. Nate, calling and texting, demanding I come home. Marla, sending concerned messages about my emotional state and how I was making this harder than necessary. I turned it off. That first night, Poppy slept on the bed next to me for the first time in weeks. I woke up to her pressed against my back, breathing steady and deep. No nightmares, no hiding. In the morning, Tess made coffee and asked the question I'd been avoiding. "What's your plan here?" "I don't know yet." "Because you can't just hide forever, and that woman isn't going anywhere if Nate won't make her." She was right. Marla had found the perfect setup, a son who wouldn't challenge her, a house where she could control everything, and me removed as an obstacle. I need to document everything properly, build a case. The videos you showed me, those aren't enough? Nate didn't care about the videos. Tess refilled my coffee cup. Then you need to find people who will. That afternoon, while Poppy napped in the sunshine by Tess's window, I started making calls. First, I called the animal control office and reported the poisoning. They took down all the details, said they'd need the vet's test results and the video evidence. Then I called Dr. Martinez again. "I need copies of everything. The test results, your notes, all of it. For legal proceedings?" Something like that. The third call was to Nate's sister Jenny. She lived in Seattle, but we'd always gotten along well. She was the only member of his family who'd ever asked about my life, my interests, my thoughts on things beyond household management. "Ava, I was wondering when you'd call. Nate's been blowing up everyone's phones about you having some kind of breakdown." "I didn't have a breakdown. I found evidence that your mother was poisoning my dog." Silence on the other end. "Jenny?" Ava, that's a serious accusation. "I have video. I have test results from the vet. Your mother has been systematically trying to make Poppy sick." More silence. Then, "Can you send me the videos?" I forwarded everything. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. "Oh my God." Jenny's voice was shaky. "Ava, this is criminal. Try telling your brother that. Mum's always been controlling, but this. Why would she do this to an innocent animal?" The question I'd been asking myself for weeks, because Poppy represents something she can't control. My relationship with Nate, my place in his life. She wants me gone, and hurting my dog was the easiest way to make that happen. And Nate's just letting it happen. Nate refuses to see it. He keeps making excuses for her. Jenny was quiet for a long moment. "I'm coming down this weekend. This is unacceptable." After we hung up, I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks. Hope, but it was short-lived. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I know you're staying on Maple Street. This tantrum needs to end. Come home so we can discuss this rationally." Marla, my blood went cold. She'd been watching us, following us. I showed the message to Tess when she got home from work. "That's harassment," she said immediately. "And stalking. She knows where I am. Good. Let her know we're not hiding. Let her know other people are watching now too." That evening, I sat at Tess's kitchen table and wrote out a timeline of everything that had happened. Every incident, every excuse, every piece of evidence I'd gathered. When I finished, it was 8 pages long. Looking at it all laid out like that, I couldn't understand how I'd let it go on so long. My phone rang. "Nate?" This time I answered. "Ava, thank God. Mum told me some crazy story about you accusing her of hurting Poppy. That's not like you. Your mother has been poisoning my dog for weeks." "Come on. You know how that sounds? I have video of her doing it." "You have video of her?" "What exactly?" "Feeding Poppy? Moving her food bowl? That's not poisoning. The vet confirmed it, Nate. Sleep medication in her food, enough to make her sick. There has to be another explanation." "Like what?" He was quiet for a moment. "Maybe Poppy got into something. Maybe she found some pills that fell on the floor. Multiple times, mixed into her food. I don't know. But I know my mother wouldn't hurt an animal." "Do you? How well do you actually know your mother? She raised me. She's been nothing but generous with her time. Helping us out. Helping us out? Nate, she moved in without asking and has been making my life miserable for 2 months. She needed a place to stay while she figured things out. She figured things out, all right. She figured out exactly how to drive me away." The line went quiet. When he spoke again, his voice was different. Colder. "Maybe that's not such a bad thing." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What did you just say?" I said, "Maybe this is for the best. You've been different since Mom got here. Paranoid, hostile. Maybe some space would be good for both of us. Your mother has been systematically abusing my dog, and you think I'm the problem? She's not abusing anything. And honestly, it's just a dog, Ava. Just a dog." The 3 words that ended everything. "If that's how you feel," I said quietly, "then we have nothing left to talk about." I hung up and turned off my phone. Tess found me crying at her kitchen table 20 minutes later. "What happened?" I told her about the conversation, about Nate's final comment. "He chose her," I said through tears. "When it came down to it, he chose her." Tess sat down next to me. "Then you know what you have to do." "What?" "Stop trying to convince him. Stop trying to save a relationship with someone who just told you your dog's life doesn't matter. Start making sure that woman faces real consequences for what she did." I looked at Poppy, sleeping peacefully in the living room, still alive, still trusting me to protect her. Tess was right. This wasn't about winning Nate back anymore. This was about justice. "I'm going to make sure she can never do this again," I said. And for the first time since this whole nightmare started, I meant it. The next morning, I started building my case methodically. The plan started with documentation. I researched animal cruelty laws, found that what Marla had done qualified as multiple felonies. I compiled every video, every photo, every timeline into a comprehensive file. Then I started reaching out, not just to animal control, but to every organization I could find that dealt with animal abuse cases. The breakthrough came when I connected with Sarah Chen, a reporter at the Portland Herald, who covered whatever stories came across her desk. City council meetings, traffic accidents, neighborhood disputes that ended up in police reports. I've seen a lot of family drama over the years. She told me when I shared the evidence. What strikes me about this is how calculated it is. Most domestic conflicts are messy, emotional, obvious. But this, she studied my timeline. This is someone who planned each step. It's methodical. What do you mean? Think about it. If Marla had openly attacked you, you would have fought back. Others would have intervened. But by targeting Poppy, she could hurt you while maintaining her respectable image. Animals can't testify. They can't tell anyone what happened. And when they get sick or act traumatized, people assume it's just normal pet problems. Sarah leaned forward. Plus, there's the psychological satisfaction. She gets to watch you suffer while playing the concerned family member. She gets power and control without the risk of direct confrontation. It's cowardly, but it's also calculated. So this isn't just about Marla being stressed from her divorce. Stress doesn't make you systematically torture innocent creatures, Ava. This is someone who derives satisfaction from having absolute power over the helpless. The divorce may have been a trigger, but this level of premeditated cruelty suggests the pathology was already there. Finally, someone was explaining Marla's behavior instead of excusing it. There's something else, Sarah continued. I've been building a database of similar cases. Would you be willing to go public with your story? Not for revenge, but to warn other potential victims. I thought about it. Going public meant no more hiding, no more pretending this was a private family matter. What would that look like? A detailed article with your evidence, but focused on the pattern of behavior and how to recognize it. Education, not sensationalism. Tuesday morning, I drove to the coffee shop near the yoga studio where Marla spent her mornings. I called the studio's main line from my car. Hi, this is Sarah Chen from the Portland Herald. We're doing a story on animal cruelty cases in the community, and we understand Marla Cole might be connected to an ongoing investigation. Is she available for comment? I hung up and watched through the studio's large windows as a staff member entered the yoga room. Saw Marla's face change from serene to panicked as she grabbed her phone and rushed outside. She called me immediately. What have you done? Her voice was shaking. I told the truth. You can't prove anything. I already have. I ended the call and drove to meet Sarah at the Herald offices. The story ran 3 days later, The Hidden Cruelty, when family members target beloved pets. It included still frames from the security video, quotes from Dr. Martinez about the health effects, and expert commentary about the psychology behind such behavior. But most importantly, it included a detailed explanation of warning signs and resources for other victims. The response was measured but significant. By Thursday, I had 3 emails from people describing situations that had nagged at them but they'd never reported. A woman whose mother-in-law's house always seemed to have accidents happen to visiting pets. A man whose stepfather had dismissed multiple incidents as coincidence. A veterinary technician who'd noticed a pattern in certain families but hadn't known what to do about it. What struck me most was that these people had suspected something before, but had been told they were overreacting, just like I had been. The knock on Tess's door came at 7 in the morning, 3 days after the newspaper story broke. I was drinking coffee on the porch with Poppy curled up at my feet when a woman in a crisp navy blazer approached. She looked official. Serious. Ms. Morales? I'm Detective Sarah Kim with the Portland Police Bureau. I'd like to speak with you about your animal cruelty report. My stomach clenched. Is everything okay? We've received multiple complaints about Mrs. Cole since your story ran. I need to ask you some questions. I invited her in, my mind racing. Multiple complaints? What did that mean? Detective Kim settled into Tess's living room, pulling out a notebook. I've been tracking unusual pet deaths and disappearances in the metro area for the past year. It's part of a task force on animal cruelty. When your story ran, several pieces clicked into place. What do you mean? We had an open file on suspicious animal incidents in your neighborhood. A neighbor reported seeing an older woman throwing rocks at cats, but couldn't identify her. Another witness saw someone kick a dog at Powell Butte Park. We also had reports from Vancouver, Washington about missing pets during Mrs. Cole's residency there. The room felt like it was spinning. This wasn't just about Poppy. Detective Kim had been tracking this pattern already. What we didn't have was a clear perpetrator or solid evidence. Your security footage and vet reports gave us what we needed to connect these incidents to one person. Missing pets? Detective Kim's expression was grim. 3 cats and a small dog vanished during her 18-month stay. She always offered to help search for them, always had theories about where they might have gone. I sank deeper into the couch, Poppy pressing closer to my legs as if sensing my distress. We're opening a formal investigation into multiple potential charges. I need your security footage and any other evidence you have. I provided everything. The videos, the veterinary reports, the timeline I documented. Detective Kim reviewed each piece carefully. This is solid evidence of intentional animal cruelty. Combined with the other reports, we're looking at a possible pattern of predatory behavior toward animals. After she left, I called Jenny immediately. The police are investigating your mother, I said without preamble. What? For what? I explained Detective Kim's visit, the additional reports, the pattern of behavior spanning multiple residences. Jenny was quiet for a long moment. Oh my God, I need to tell you something. What? When we were kids, our family dog died suddenly. Rex. He was perfectly healthy, then just gone. Mum said he got into some poison in the garage, but I always wondered. And there were other pets in the neighborhood that disappeared. I never connected it before. Another piece clicked into place. This had been going on for decades. Jenny, I need you to think carefully. Were there other incidents? Other animals that seemed to have accidents around your mother? Actually, yes. Mrs. Patterson's cat was found dead in our garage. The Johnsons' little terrier went missing and turned up in the woods behind our house. But these things happen in suburbia, you know? Or that's what everyone said. What about your mother's reaction when these things happened? Jenny was quiet for a moment. She was always the first to offer help. She'd organize search parties, make flyers, comfort the families. Everyone thought she was so compassionate. Another pause. But now that I think about it, she was also always the one who suggested the animals had probably just wandered off or found better homes. She discouraged people from looking too hard or reporting to police. Did she ever hurt you or Nate directly? Never. And that's what's so sick about it, isn't it? She knew exactly what she was doing. Animals can't tell anyone what happened. They can't fight back or report her. But hurting them was a way to hurt the people who loved them without ever having to face consequences. Jenny's voice got quieter. I remember when Mrs. Patterson's cat died. Mum held her while she cried. She was so sympathetic, so understanding. But I caught her smiling afterward when Mrs. Patterson wasn't looking. Like she was pleased about something. Pleased. I think she got off on the power, on knowing she could cause all this pain and grief, and everyone would thank her for being supportive. It's like the perfect crime. She gets to be cruel and be seen as kind at the same time. Jenny was quiet for a long moment. You know what I think it really was? Mum never could handle not being the center of attention. When I was little, if I got hurt or sick, she'd hover and fuss and make it all about how worried she was, how much she was doing to take care of me. But if something good happened to me, good grades, friends, whatever, she'd find ways to diminish it. How do you mean? Like when I made honor roll, she'd immediately start talking about how the standards must be getting lower. When I brought friends over, she'd find fault with them, their manners, their families, something. She couldn't stand for anyone else to have something good without her controlling the narrative around it. I thought about this. So, with you and Nate, we grew up and got our own lives. I moved to Seattle, found work I loved, a relationship that made me happy. Nate found you, was planning to get married, had this whole future that didn't revolve around her. She couldn't diminish our actual lives anymore. We were too far away, too independent, but she could sabotage them. Exactly. And animals are perfect targets because they represent everything she hates. Unconditional love that she didn't earn. Attention and affection going to something other than her. Relationships that make other people happy without needing her approval. The pieces were falling into place. She wasn't just trying to get rid of Poppy. She was trying to prove that love like that is fragile, that she could destroy it. And she almost did, didn't she? If you hadn't fought so hard, if you just let Poppy get sicker and sicker until something happened, Nate would have comforted you, and Mom would have been there to help you through your grief. She'd have been the center of attention again, the important one, the one everyone depended on. Not anymore. Now there was a detective who saw the pattern, who understood that this wasn't about one stressed woman having a bad reaction to a dog. This was about someone who derived satisfaction from controlling and harming innocent animals. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You have no idea the damage you've caused. This won't end here." I showed it to Tess when she got home. "That's clearly a threat," she said immediately. "You need to report this to Detective Kim." "I will. But first, I want to check something." That evening, I drove past my old house. Nate's car was in the driveway, but Marla's Lexus was gone. The curtains were drawn, and the place looked dark, abandoned. I parked across the street and called Nate. "Ava?" He sounded surprised, maybe hopeful. "Where's your mother?" She left. Yesterday." "Left for where?" "I don't know." She packed up and said she needed to start fresh somewhere that appreciated her. His voice was strained, tired. The police came by asking questions. "Good. This has gotten completely out of hand, Ava. Mom made some mistakes, but now her reputation is destroyed. The same excuse, always protecting her, never acknowledging what she'd done to Poppy. Her reputation should be destroyed, Nate. She's been systematically abusing animals for years." "She wasn't abusing anyone. And honestly, the way you've handled this, it's cruel." I almost laughed at the irony. Cruel would be doing what your mother did to Poppy. This is called consequences. The line went quiet. When he spoke again, his voice was different, smaller. "I keep thinking about the night you found Poppy under the porch. I told myself it was an accident, that Mum just forgot to close the door. But you knew better." "I suspected," he admitted. "I just couldn't. I couldn't face what that meant about her, about me for allowing it." It was the closest thing to an apology I was going to get. The police said she might have done this before, in other places, to other animals. I know. How could I not know that about my own mother? Because people like your mother are very good at hiding who they really are, and people like you are very good at not asking difficult questions. Another silence. "Is there any chance we could?" he began. "No," I said firmly. "There isn't." I hung up and sat in my car, looking at the house that used to be my home. A month ago, I'd been planning a wedding, imagining a future with Nate, believing I was building something solid and lasting. Now I understood that I'd been living an illusion. The man I'd loved existed, but only when it was convenient for him. When it required him to make difficult choices, to stand up to his mother, to protect something vulnerable that depended on him, that man disappeared. My phone rang. "Detective Kim, we found Mrs. Cole," she said. "She's in Eugene, staying at an extended stay hotel. Are you going to arrest her? We're building a comprehensive case. The Vancouver police have reopened their missing pet investigations. We're coordinating with authorities in 2 other states where she's lived. This could take time, but we have enough evidence to press charges." I drove back to Tess's house, where Poppy was waiting by the window. When she saw me, her whole body wiggled with excitement. She was getting stronger every day, more like her old self. But I could still see the trauma in her eyes sometimes, the way she flinched when someone moved too quickly, how she stayed close to me in new environments. Some damage took longer to heal. That night, I made a decision. I called a lawyer. Not a criminal lawyer. Detective Kim was handling that side. I called a civil attorney who specialized in emotional distress and property damage cases. "I want to sue Marla Cole," I told him, "for veterinary bills, emotional distress, and intentional infliction of emotional harm. Based on animal cruelty? Based on a systematic campaign to harm my pet and drive me out of my own home." He listened to the whole story, reviewed the evidence I'd gathered. "This is unusual," he said finally, "but you have a strong case. The intentional nature is well documented. The harm to both you and the animal is clear." "I don't care about the money," I said. "I want it on the public record. I want other people to be able to find this when they search her name. I wanted to make sure that wherever Marla Cole went next, whatever new victim she targeted, there would be a trail. No more innocent animals would suffer while people made excuses and looked the other way." The lawyer explained the process, the timeline, the likely outcomes. "Even if she settles out of court," he said, "the filing becomes public record. Anyone doing a background check will find it." Perfect. That afternoon, Marla called me from Eugene. "I need to talk to you," she said. her voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. "We have nothing to discuss. I never meant for things to go this far. I thought if Poppy was gone, you and Nate could focus on your relationship. That's all. By poisoning my dog, I researched the dosage carefully. I never intended permanent harm. The justification was breathtaking. You were slowly killing her, Marla, and enjoying it. I'll pay you whatever you want. For the vet bills, for your inconvenience, I'll leave Oregon permanently." "No, please, Ava. You've destroyed my social standing, my entire support system. Good." Her voice turned cold. "If you don't drop this, I'll fight back. I have resources. I'll tell everyone how unstable you became, how you manipulated my son against his own family. There was the real Marla, the mask finally off." "Go ahead," I said calmly. "Let's see how that works out for someone with an active police investigation." I hung up and immediately called Detective Kim to report the contact. 2 days later, I got a call from Jenny. "Mom contacted me," she said without preamble. "She wants me to convince you to drop everything." "About what?" "She says if you drop the police reports and the civil suit, she'll pay for all of Poppy's medical care and leave the entire state permanently." I almost laughed. "She thinks this is about money?" "I think she's terrified, really terrified. She's never faced consequences like this before." "Good, she should be terrified." "Ava, I have to ask, what do you want here? What's the end game?" I looked at Poppy, sleeping peacefully in a patch of afternoon sunlight. Safe, healthy, alive. I want her to never be able to do this again. To any animal, ever. And if the criminal case doesn't work out, if she gets a good lawyer and beats the charges, then at least there's a paper trail. At least the next time someone notices their pet getting sick around her, they'll be able to find the story about what she did to Poppy. Jenny was quiet for a moment. "You're not going to back down." "No, I'm not." "Then neither will I. If you need a witness, someone to testify about Rex and the other pets from our childhood, I'll do it." The support from Nate's own sister was more satisfying than any revenge I could have planned. After we hung up, I sat on Tess's porch with Poppy and thought about how much my life had changed. A month ago, I'd been a woman who avoided conflict, who kept the peace at any cost, who made herself smaller to make others more comfortable. Now, I was someone who fought back, who demanded justice, who refused to be silenced. The woman who had been too afraid to confront her fiancé about his mother's behavior had become someone who was taking that same woman to court. My phone buzzed with another unknown number text. "This isn't over." I screenshotted it and forwarded it to Detective Kim, then blocked the number. Let her threaten me. Let her try to intimidate me. I wasn't the same person who had found Poppy shivering under the porch that night. That woman had been isolated, unsupported, afraid to trust her own perceptions. This woman had allies, evidence, legal representation, and most importantly, the absolute certainty that she was doing the right thing. Whatever Marla Cole tried next, I was ready for her. The call came on a Tuesday morning, 6 weeks after I'd last spoken to Marla. Detective Kim's voice was different this time, satisfied. "We're making arrests today," she said. "Multiple charges of animal cruelty, plus harassment and stalking based on those threatening messages you reported." I sat down heavily on Tess's couch, Poppy immediately coming over to press against my legs. "It's really happening? The Vancouver cases gave us the pattern we needed. Plus, we found evidence of 2 more incidents in Eugene. She lasted 3 weeks at that extended stay hotel before other guests started reporting problems with their pets." After I hung up, I realized I felt different than I'd expected. Not triumphant, not relieved, just complete. Like I'd been carrying something heavy for months and could finally set it down. Tess found me an hour later, still sitting on the couch with Poppy. "You okay?" she asked, settling beside me. "I think so. It's just surreal, you know. For so long I felt like I was going crazy, like maybe I was overreacting. And now?" I looked down at Poppy, who had gained back most of the weight she'd lost. Her coat was shiny again, her eyes bright, but she still startled sometimes when someone moved too quickly. Now I know I was the only one taking it seriously enough. That afternoon, Jenny called. "I heard about Mom's arrest." she said without preamble. Nate's in complete denial. How is he handling it? Honestly, he's convinced this is all a misunderstanding. He's been calling lawyers, trying to figure out how to help her, still making excuses. I wasn't surprised. Even now, Nate would try to save his mother. Jenny, I need to tell you something. What? I'm moving. Leaving Portland. The silence stretched between us. Finally, she spoke. Where? I don't know yet. Somewhere warmer. Somewhere Poppy can have a big yard and we can start completely fresh. Because of Nate? Because this city feels poisoned now. Too many people who watched it happen and said nothing. Too many memories of being gaslit and dismissed. Jenny was quiet for a moment. I understand, but I'll miss you. You'll always be welcome wherever we end up. The next surprise came 3 days later, when Nate showed up at Tess's door. I hadn't seen him since that phone call weeks ago. He looked thinner, older. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by something that looked like shame. Can we talk? He asked. I stepped onto the porch, closing the door behind me. Poppy was napping inside, and I didn't want her to see him. She still got anxious around men she didn't know well. What do you want, Nate? To apologize. To try to understand what I missed. There's nothing to understand. It's over. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I remembered from our early days together. I keep thinking about what you said, about how I always knew but didn't want to see it. And you were right. I saw the signs. The way Mum talked about animals, how she reacted when neighbors got new pets. I told myself it was just her being particular. Harmless opinions. I studied his face. He looked genuinely broken, genuinely sorry. That doesn't change anything, Nate. I know. I just needed you to know that I know. That you weren't paranoid or overreacting or any of the things I made you feel like you were. It was the acknowledgement I'd needed months ago. Now it felt too late and not enough. Your mother is going to prison, Nate. Are you prepared for that? His face crumpled. She's ill. She needs treatment, not prison. And there it was. Even now, even with everything that had happened, he was making excuses for her. She's not ill. She's cruel. There's a difference. I went back inside, leaving him standing on the porch. A week later, the phone rang with news I hadn't expected. Mrs. Morales? This is Janet Walsh from the District Attorney's Office. I'm calling about the Cole case. My stomach clenched. Is everything okay? Actually, yes. Mrs. Cole has agreed to plead guilty to all charges in exchange for a reduced sentence. She'll serve 18 months, plus community service and mandatory psychological evaluation. 18 months? It seemed like nothing for what she'd put Poppy through. I know it might not seem like enough, but with her age and the cooperation from other jurisdictions, this was the best we could do. And there's something else. What? She's agreed to pay restitution for all veterinary expenses, plus damages for emotional distress. The amount is substantial. After I hung up, I sat with the information. Justice wasn't always what you expected it to be, but it was something. And more importantly, it was public record now. The civil lawsuit settled 2 weeks later. Marla's lawyer, clearly wanting to avoid a public trial, offered an amount that made my lawyer whistle low. This is more than we could have gotten at trial, he said. She really wants this to disappear. I thought about that money, about what it meant, what it could do. That evening, I called the Oregon Humane Society. I'd like to make a donation, I told them, to help animals who've been abused or neglected. The amount I donated was exactly what Marla had paid me in restitution. Every penny. It felt like the right kind of justice. Her money used to help the creatures she'd spent her life tormenting. 2 months later, I was packing the last of my belongings when the decision finally felt right. Not just leaving, but choosing something new. The house in North Carolina had appeared in my search almost by accident. A small place outside Asheville with a fenced yard and mountain views. Something about the listing photo made me stop scrolling. Poppy sleeping safely in sunshine. So you're really doing this? Tess said, finding me folding clothes into boxes. I really am. Any second thoughts? I looked around the spare room that had been our sanctuary for months. None. This city feels like a place where bad things happened. I want to go somewhere where we can just be normal. The drive to North Carolina was peaceful in a way I hadn't expected. Poppy slept most of the way, occasionally lifting her head to check that I was still there. We stopped at pet-friendly hotels, walked in parks where no one knew our story, bought treats from gas stations where we were just another woman and her dog. It felt like healing. The first weeks in Asheville were quiet. I worked from my laptop, freelance writing assignments that paid the bills while I figured out what came next. Poppy seemed to understand this was permanent. She explored every room methodically, claimed her favorite sunny spot by the kitchen window, started barking at the mail carrier like a normal dog. The neighbors were friendly but not intrusive. Mrs. Chen next door brought us cookies and asked polite questions about where we'd moved from. The couple across the street waved from their garden but didn't pry. It was exactly what we needed. I found Dr. Rebecca Martinez's clinic 3 blocks away when Poppy needed her vaccinations updated. She was about my age, with kind eyes and gentle hands that Poppy trusted immediately. She's been through something, Dr. Martinez observed during the examination. But she's resilient. Dogs are amazing at moving forward when they feel safe. She is safe now, I said, and meant it. The volunteer opportunity came up a month later, almost by accident. I was at the clinic for Poppy's follow-up appointment when Dr. Martinez mentioned a dog in their boarding area who was struggling with trust issues. Would you mind if Poppy just existed near him? Sometimes calm dogs help traumatized ones remember that humans can be safe. I found myself saying yes. The dog was a shepherd mix named Duke, who pressed himself into the corner of his kennel whenever anyone approached. But when Poppy settled down nearby and ignored him completely, just napping in the sunshine, Duke gradually relaxed enough to lie down too. You two make a good team, Dr. Martinez said after an hour of this quiet companionship. That's how I started volunteering with Second Chances. One afternoon, a week became 2, then 3. I'd bring my laptop and work while sitting near kennels, letting skittish dogs get used to the idea that humans could be boring and safe. Poppy often came with me. Something about her calm presence seemed to help the other dogs relax. She'd find a comfortable spot and settle in for however long it took, occasionally lifting her head to acknowledge a dog's tentative approach, but never pushing for more interaction than they were ready for. She understands, I told Rebecca one afternoon, watching Poppy lie peacefully next to a terrified beagle who hadn't let anyone touch her since being rescued from a hoarding situation. She knows what it's like to be afraid. Rebecca agreed. It was Rebecca who suggested we grab coffee after one of these sessions. Not a date, just 2 people who worked with traumatized animals talking about the day. Then it became dinner once a week. Then long walks around the neighborhood with Poppy trotting between us, both dogs content to explore the quiet streets. The relationship developed slowly, like everything else in my new life. Rebecca never pushed, never assumed, never made me feel like I had to be anyone other than exactly who I was becoming. 6 months after moving to Asheville, we were sitting on my porch watching the sunset when she asked the question I'd been expecting. Do you ever regret it? Fighting so hard for Poppy, even when it cost you your whole life in Portland? By then, we'd been joined by Chance, a golden retriever mix who'd come to us from a hoarding situation. It had taken Chance 3 months to stop flinching when women raised their voices. But now, she was playing in the yard with Poppy. Both dogs healthy and joyful and secure. Never, I said. She couldn't speak for herself. Someone had to. And what about Nate? Do you regret how that ended? I thought about it. About the man who'd looked at video evidence of animal abuse and searched for ways to explain it away. About someone who could say, it's just a dog. About a creature I loved. I regret that I stayed as long as I did. I regret that I doubted myself when I should have trusted what I was seeing. But leaving him, no regrets there. Rebecca nodded. It's hard to accept that people we love can make choices that show us who they really are. It wasn't really a choice for him, I said. It was automatic. His mother's comfort always came first. It took a crisis for me to see that clearly. As the sun set behind the mountains, Poppy came over and put her head in my lap. Her red collar was faded now, soft from wear and mountain weather. But her eyes were bright and trusting, and when I scratched behind her ears, her tail thumped against my leg with pure contentment. "Good girl," I whispered. "We made it." She looked up at me with those trusting brown eyes, and I saw everything I'd fought for reflected back at me. Safety, peace, the knowledge that someone would always choose her, always protect her, always put her first. In the distance, Chance barked once at something only she could see, probably a squirrel. Poppy's ears perked up with mild interest, but she didn't leave my side. She knew she was exactly where she belonged. We were home.